I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for coming today. I know that some of you who are in the media had other things to do. One person was headed to vacation, so we'll have to work to get you an extra day. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Coach Pete Hughes and his staff for the job they did during his tenure as our head coach. They are actually having their press conference at this very moment in Norman. And we're proud to have our press conference here in Blacksburg. The gentleman to my right and John Jadon's left. Does that get you pretty well?
Yeah, it gets him.
That makes me.
That's you.
Has completed this past season as our head baseball coach. He's completed 3 seasons as our pitching game coordinator. He also completed his 3rd season as our recruiting coordinator. And in a moment, I'm going to pass the baton to John Jadon to articulate about the recruiting efforts and one of the reasons we're excited about the future under the leadership of Pat Mason. I'd be remiss also if I didn't say that in just 3 seasons under Pat's leadership, we've had 10 Hokie pitchers sign pro contracts, including 6 individuals off this year's roster. Pat Mason, in my opinion, is the consummate baseball man, and I'm very pleased to introduce Pat as our new head coach after we hear from John Jadon talk about the recruiting model.
Just want to share with you really the model that we've put together here at Virginia Tech as it relates to the sport of baseball. As you know, recruiting has become earlier and earlier and earlier across the country in all sports. We've kind of taken advantage of that with some very hard work and with some projecting of 9th graders and 10th graders in the sport of baseball. Pat has been one of the staff who's put that model together, has been like an architect, if you will, of that model. And we're fortunate that as Jim and I were talking about a successor for Coach Hughes, we started to analyze the fact that we have 10 prospects who have committed to us for the 2014 and 15 seasons already. 7 in 14 and 3 in 15. And how best could we keep them connected to and committed to Virginia Tech? Well, we started looking, and Pat Mason was again one of the architects of that model, and is the guy who has those relationships built with those 10 young men. And so we said we don't need to look any further than what we have right here in Blacksburg. And so that's the reason why we've taken the swift and decisive action that we have in replacing Pete with a member of his staff, Pat Mason. And as Jim already articulated, I couldn't be more happy having Pat Mason as our head baseball coach. Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Jadon. Thank you, Mr. Weaver. And thank you to everyone for getting here today. I know it was short notice, and I apologize to those of you in the audience who I dodged phone calls for the last 5 hours, but hopefully we can get everything on the table here today. I'd like to first start by thanking President Steger, Mr. Weaver, and Mr. Jadon for bestowing upon me the honor and the privilege of being named the 24th head coach in Virginia Tech baseball history. I need to give a special thanks to Pete Hughes, who believed in me 3 years ago. Didn't take much convincing, but convinced me to come down to Blacksburg, provided me with an unbelievable opportunity. He was as good as a mentor as I could ever imagine having, and an even better friend in person. I need to acknowledge my wife, Lee, for really, for those of you who don't understand, or I'm sure you know, being a coach's wife is not easy. And I am truly blessed and thankful every day to have such a beautiful wife and supportive wife to share in this moment. Moving forward, you can expect that I will uphold the standard of excellence and the tradition that both Coach Hughes and before him, Coach Hartman set forth for this program. I've been an assistant coach for 17 years, and I am ready to accept the challenge of being a head baseball coach. We will continue to compete at the highest level, and we will continue to chase our goal of getting to Omaha. It's my belief with our current talent within the program, the incoming freshmen that we have coming in this fall, and the commitments that John referred to, that the future has never been brighter for Hokie baseball. And then lastly, before I open it up, my first duty and honor as head coach of Virginia Tech is to announce that we have won a major recruiting battle with Oklahoma. And it is an honor for me to announce that Mike Kunagonis has decided to stay in Blacksburg and join me as the associate head coach of Virginia Tech baseball. It is unbelievable to be able to retain Mike and his wife Amy, and they are pillars in this community and within the campus of Virginia Tech. So I know that I'm going home real happy. That's one down, and I'm sure you're going to ask who the next guy's going to be. So without further ado, I guess you can open it up for questions.
Afternoon. Jim, I think Tech fans probably have two big questions. How much money were you willing to spend to keep Pete Hughes at Tech? And B, Patrick Mason could wind up being the next Brian O'Connor, but for now, a lot of Tech fans are probably saying, there you go again, Mr. Weaver, hiring someone who has already been at Tech, someone you already know, rather than going out and hiring someone from outside the campus like you did when you hired Pete Hughes. Can you kind of shed some light on your mindset on those two topics there?
Yes, the first one was how much were we willing to pay to keep Pete in Blacksburg? The answer to that, Mark, is Pete was in my home yesterday morning, and we spent an hour and 15 minutes together, and the bottom line was there was not going to be a bidding war. In my estimation, Pete came to my house to tell me that he was going to take the Oklahoma job unless there was just something that was totally out of character in terms of his family liking the Norman area. That addresses Coach Hughes' situation. You know, John Jadon did a very good job of describing how we got through the process and settled at this juncture on Pat. And I have made some hires before when they've been internal to our department. We've made some hires over the years that have been external. I will stick by my decisions, and tell you that just as John Jadon's gut told him that Pat Mason was the right person for the job at this moment in time, I too feel the very same way. Yes.
For Jim or John, was there a timing issue of if you didn't offer Pat the job, he might end up in Oklahoma as well, and you wouldn't have him? You guys made the decision, obviously, very quickly.
That was a consideration, and it's one of a number of factors that go into the equation. And I'm just glad that we arrived where we did, believing and feeling and knowing that Pat is the right person, especially when if you would have heard the endorsement from Pete yesterday morning also, you would understand why we're sitting here today.
Pat, you've been an assistant for a long time in the college ranks. What have you picked up over that time, or what do you think makes you prepared to be a head coach for the first time?
Well, I've been fortunate enough here with working with Pete that he's empowered me to make decisions on my own. And although they're not the final decisions, I feel comfortable making a quick, tough decision. I feel as though I have very good relationships, specifically in my current role, or my past role now, with the pitching staff, that I can spread that over the full team. And you can only be assistant long enough before you're a lifetime assistant. My goal was to be a head coach from the day that I started when I got into this business, and I feel I'm prepared now to handle all those major tasks.
One, to follow up on that, to get your first head coaching job in the ACC, talk about the challenge of, it's not exactly starting out easy.
It's going great so far. No, it's an unbelievable honor to be a head coach at any level, anywhere in the country, and to have it be here in Blacksburg at the level that the ACC plays at it's a dream come true. But to me, the men that are to my left and right, to have them look me in the eye and say I'm their candidate and they chose me to offer the position to, is that alone is a dream come true. Never mind the level of play or the region or anything else. So it's still sinking in a little bit too.
I know this is all new and just happened. Have you thought about, will you manage the pitching staff and be your own pitching coach, or will you hire somebody for that role? What are your thoughts there?
Unless something unforeseen happen, I will be hiring a pitching coach. Now, in that transition phase, I certainly see myself overseeing it to a minor degree. And I say transition, I just mean while whoever we hire gets their feet underneath them. But come season, I will be managing the team as a whole, and the pitching staff will be run by a pitching coach.
Jim, if you could elaborate before when you said there were some factors that led to you choosing Patrick just one day after learning Pete was leaving. If you could elaborate on that, because obviously some schools are willing to have a longer search. Obviously Oklahoma took some time and hired Hughes. Oklahoma was willing to risk prospects leaving and hired Hughes from outside the program. So what kind of led to your thinking, no, let's do this one day later?
Well, I'm not sure you're accurate, Mark, on the timetable, because Oklahoma was involved a little earlier. We were aware a little earlier of what was going on, at least 5 days, right, John?
Last Friday.
Yeah, since last Friday. And so we began to talk about all the factors that are involved in hiring a candidate. And one of the things that is very difficult to do is to replace recruits. And if you have some people who've already committed themselves to you for 1 and 2 years out in the future, I think it behooves us to keep them as best we can. And I know that is first and foremost on Pat's and Big Mike's minds. And so that will be their first charge.
Pat, are there things that, as an assistant, you did have some control and say over things, but it wasn't your program. Are there things in your mind that you want to change or do differently, or are you trying to continue kind of what you guys have built with Pete?
To the point on that, really, I think a big part of the reason why I was selected as the head coach is because people next to me know that I'm going to carry forth a lot of what Pete had established here. And yes, I'll be my own person. I'll put my own spin on things, if you will. But we're going to be involved in the community. We're going to carry on that tradition with pride. We're going to represent the campus and the community of Blacksburg the same way that Coach Hughes' teams did the past 7 years. We're going to recruit the same profile player, and we're going to compete like crazy. So I think the answer to your question will be found by the middle of the season. You'll start seeing how I do things differently. I'm not coming in here looking to change things. I'm coming in here looking to retain our recruits and keep things moving in the same direction that they've been going for the last 7 years.
Mark, let me address one item from your previous question, and that is, and Pat, please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have all the compliance issues at my fingertips like I did as a young guy about 30 years ago. My understanding is that we can begin contacting 2014 prospects verbally on the 1st of July.
Correct.
And so, Mark, that is an issue that is vitally important to us and the people who've already verbaled to us, so that we can do everything we can to keep those people coming to Virginia Tech.
Patrick, congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you look at this situation as just the challenge is just continuing to maintain an already successful program, or do you look at it and say, with all the people you lost to as seniors this year into the pros, that this was going to be a dip situation anyway, and this is going to be kind of a cycle thing where it may take a few years to get back, just like it did between 2010 and 2013?
Well, I look at this situation as when we break the huddle for the first time in September, we're going to say Omaha. Oh, I don't want to come in here with anything less of an expectation and a goal.
Jim and John, the timeline just gets straight. So you learned last Friday Oklahoma wanted to talk to Pete Hughes.
I gave permission to Joe Castiglione, the AD, to talk to Coach Hughes last Friday.
And then yesterday, Pete broke the news to you that I'm leaving for Oklahoma. Or was it earlier than that? You said you already...
No, it was not earlier than that. It was at that meeting at my home.
And had you, since last Friday, had you talked to anybody, other candidates besides Patrick, or kind of when did that interview process, so to speak, begin?
The interview process began 2 days ago with John and I and Patrick talking, because John, as the supervising associate AD, was charged by me of developing questions and a strategic approach to analyzing what we ought to do. And we have arrived at the best decision that we could make, and that is to keep our recruiting coordinator for the last 3 years intact and aggressively working on behalf of Virginia Tech.
John, did you contact any other schools or any other candidates in those 2 days, or were you focused on, if things worked out with Pat, that's where you were going?
To be honest, I was focusing on keeping Pete for much of that time, and just in communication with him. He had guaranteed me that he'd keep me informed every step of the way through his process, and so we had many conversations over those days. It wasn't until probably 72 hours ago that it started to become evident that Oklahoma was probably going to be the landing spot for Pete. And at that time, I began to review all the material that I had gathered 7 years ago when we landed Pete here. And again, and Jim knows this because I was out of town myself until this past Tuesday night. I was back at work yesterday in the office, and I had, fortunately, my computer with me that had all that information in it, so I started reviewing it. And then when Jim and I started talking about a successor, I indicated to him that, you know, we have the successor here, and Pete endorsed that as well, very, very strongly, as Jim alluded to. And when we started analyzing it, it was pretty much a no-brainer. And this is really how it's supposed to work. You know, you hope you have staff members as part of a group leading a team that at some point in time can step in and lead and be the one in charge. Pat's gifts are communication and relationship building. He is a master. I've seen what he's done with our pitching staff over the last 3 years, and if he can do that with our entire team, which I fully believe he can, they will play extremely hard for this man and for this university. And when you do that, you can maximize your potential. And that's what we expect and desire from each of our programs. So, you know, if we can keep these 2 classes that I alluded to intact, and who knows if we can, because believe me, there's a lot of schools out there that can't wait for July 1 to come around to get after those 7 that we have committed for 14 with a coaching change. I wish our industry wasn't that way, but it is. And so Pat and Mike got their hands full starting Monday.
Pat, did you have any conversations with Pete in the interim here about taking this job? And have you talked to him at all about, will he go ahead now and recruit those guys that were committed here since he's got that relationship?
Pete kept me in the loop on the process as it was unfolding, obviously, and he put a bug in my ear when he became clear that he was thinking about taking that job, and that was really only 2 days ago. So although he had planted that, I didn't really have a whole lot of time to process it and think much of it. And then yesterday morning, after he had spoken to Mr. Weaver, he called me and told me what was going on, and that he had given an endorsement, and he didn't know where that was going to lead to, but he gave me his opinion on it. So that's how that played out. What was the second question?
You talk at all about will he continue to recruit those kids that are committed?
Yeah, I don't expect him to. Although our industry can be cutthroat to a degree, there is still a level of respect that the good ones, and Pete is one of the good ones, we'll try to uphold that level of respect for each other.
John, to follow up on what you just said, what attempts did you make to try to keep Pete in that span here in terms of offering him a raise or program improvements or what have you? And then for Jim, when Pete told you he was leaving and this week, what did he tell you about, I'm leaving because I want more, they're offering me more money, or they're leaving because it's a more established program that's been in the College World Series, or what kind of reasons did he give you to explain why he wanted to take this new opportunity?
Let me answer the entire question, because there was nothing different done with John than with me. In other words, he indicated that he would let us know when he would go to Oklahoma, if he would go. And he was not called until late Tuesday night. At least that's my recollection. And then from there, we began to talk about the issue, and if there was money that would help us, where could we direct that money? In the meantime, I had called the president on Monday and was unable to get to him until Tuesday night because he was out of town on business. I did get him first thing yesterday morning, actually prior to the meeting I had with Pete. And it just so happened that the times coincided. And Pete at that juncture told me, don't go to the president and try to put a package together, because he was, unless his family didn't like Norman, he was going to go.
And what was his reasons why for leaving? Did he give you some reasons why?
No, he didn't. I think we all can understand that, there are certain institutions and certain conferences that have certain reputations for having unlimited resources and things of that nature. And to ice the cake, they flew the family out on Toby Keith's jet. So I could only compete by getting the school jet, and that wasn't going to get it.
And when you just said about, Oak Jim, about some schools have unlimited resources, for the Tech fans that are sitting there wondering why can't Tech be one of those schools and spend money to keep a baseball coach, you may be, don't want to put words in your mouth, you may be thinking, well, we're talking about baseball here, not football or basketball. The fact that, only 1,700 people showed up for a Tech second game of the regional that Saturday after Tech had lost the first game. The fact that this is not a big, high-interest sport for fans and so forth, how much does that kind of play into, I'm not going to spend more than X because we're talking about baseball and not football?
That didn't enter the equation, Mark, because Pete said, for all intent and purpose, that he was going to go unless his family found something in the environment that they didn't like or couldn't adjust to. So I don't want you to be misled. There was no give and take in terms of dollars.
Or on the flip side, not wanting to spend more than X to replace Pete, not going out to hiring somebody from a head coach with X amount of salary, trying to match that or top that, instead hiring a rookie head coach. How much of that is thinking about the fact that this is not a high-profile sport in terms of fan attendance? Does that play into it at all, that we're talking about baseball and not and not football?
No, it doesn't. We've hired the best person at the moment in time for us. And we believe that Pat can continue the recruiting efforts to keep the 10 people who've verbaled to us committed to us till they can sign in the fall, right, John?
Be 7 in 14, and 3 in 15 at this point. So we're talking a year and 2 months from now.
Because you're talking about people that will sign in 2014, not people that will play in 2014.
Well, they actually signed, the 14 class will sign this fall in the early signing period. They won't show up here till August of 14.
You're talking about people that are verbally committed, not people that
Right.
have signed and will have already planned to come here this fall.
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Pete had a habit, I guess, of not wanting to play guys he had coached with, close friends. Would you be open to a series with Oklahoma and Pete, or is that something that probably won't be happening?
I'm going to speak to that. We've already invited them to come when they go to West Virginia.
What did they say?
He is too busy doing other things today.
Patrick, can you shed a little more light on how, if any, your coaching style or your coaching philosophy or your recruiting philosophy will be different or not from Pete? I mean, I'm sure there'll be some differences because it's Patrick Mason at the helm now.
Correct. From a recruiting philosophy, it will be probably the most similar. We're going to look to recruit and continue to recruit the person who best fits the Hokie model, which is that the guy with the chip on his shoulder, the kid who won't stop playing until the last out in the ninth inning, and obviously have a certain skill set that we feel we can develop the rest of his talent to complement that. From a coaching style, I will say we have probably recruited a little bit more speed, and specifically with our freshman class coming in this year, where I think you might just see a little bit of a change because the personnel changed, but that was also something that Pete and I had oversaw with our recruiting efforts and Coach K the last 3 years. And a lot of that was just due to the change in the bats, where we thought speed was at such a premium now. But essentially, you're going to see a lot of the same, and you'll see my personality come out in different areas, but I think you're going to have to look a little close to notice it within our team.
Jim or John, do you have the terms of Pat's contract?
I do. Roughly, his base salary will be $145,800. He'll have $40,000 of different types of incentives and issues such as Nike, dealer car, country club membership, bat deal with Easton, and that will add another $40,000 to it. So the first year, Pat will be making $185,000. 5 years.
Pat, as a rookie head coach, taking over for a successful head coach, is there some pressure there, some nerves, or very much confidence because of the comfort level of having been in this program and taking over a program that's been winning?
I think a little bit of both. There's definitely a comfort level that makes it, I hope, to be a smoother transition, absolutely. But I imagine there's going to be nerves as we get closer to the first pitch of the season. And then ultimately when I start after answering questions and I can't look to anybody else, not that I went about things that way, but I think you understand what I'm saying. So a little bit of both, but I'm fully confident and extremely excited to fulfill my dream of becoming a head coach. That's it.
Nope, we're done. Thank you.
Each of the members will be available.